Initially released as an April Fool's joke, Lee Sin was introduced to the League of Legends scene on April 1st, 2011, and has become an icon of what it means to be a good League of Legends player. Lee Sin's kit was incredibly complex for the time, and to this day, more than a decade later, people can still only wish to master his plethora of combos and mechanics. Players have sunk tens of thousands of hours and still feel like they have only scratched the surface of what Lee Sin is capable of. Of course, Lee Sin's design makes him an incredible jungler and a staple for jungle players to add to their champion pool. His abilities include gap closing, executing, shielding, lifesteal, more gap close, an area of effect slow, area of effect damage, reveals, a knockback, an AoE knockup, and of course, a lot of style. So, if you're looking to style on your enemies and have an adaptable champion to suit the needs of each unique game and meta, Lee Sin is your top pick. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to get subscribed for more content like this. So what makes Lee Sin worth playing? Lee Sin is in the fighter class of champion with a early game kit to immediately establish his presence. His Q is Sonic Wave / Resonating Strike. The first part is a skill shot that hits the first enemy struck, revealing them and dealing damage. When reactivated, Lee Sin triggers the second part where he leaps to the target dealing damage based on how low their health is. His W is Safeguard / Iron Will. The first part is a targeted dashing ability that he can use on allies, and if the ally is a champion or himself, he shields them on arrival. The second part of the ability grants Lee Sin bonus lifesteal and omnivamp pretty much. Lee's E is Tempest / Ripple. The first part is an area of effect slow, dealing damage and revealing enemies struck. Lee Sin can activate the second part of the ability if any enemies are hit, slowing them for a few seconds. Finally, we move on to Lee's ultimate, which is Dragon's Rage. This targeted ability kicks the target, dealing damage and knocking them back. And if the enemy collides with any other enemies, they will also be damaged and knocked into the air. So if we compare Lee Sin to other champions in the fighter class or other junglers, it's almost disrespectful to Lee Sin's uniqueness. Lee Sin's kit is designed to allow the player to fit the champion to their playstyle. In a sense, Lee Sin can be played as an assassin, a fighter, a tank, a bruiser, and really anything if you build him right. Perhaps the best comparable champion is probably Viego. Both champions offer attack speed boosts, gap closure, displacement, execution damage, healing, and slows that when piloted by an intelligent player are incredibly difficult to deal with and quite honestly probably be 1v9 in a game. The main difference between these two champions is that Viego doesn't quite have as much adaptability to be as defensive and supportive as Lee Sin can be. However, in Viego's defense, he's much easier to play than Lee Sin. So let's talk style needed to play this champ. Playing Lee Sin requires a lot of patience and forethought. Knowing that Lee Sin can make incredible plays, he also requires a certain threshold of discipline. Landing his Q can be so exciting that players can easily tunnel vision onto the target and end up in very sticky situations. The fundamental uses of Lee Sin's kit are not extremely difficult to understand, but even the slightest variation in the position can drastically change the order he should be using his abilities and weaving in basic attacks to deal the most damage. So, Lee Sin is not something you should be first picking in solo queue. In fact, Lee Sin is probably the champion you should only take in the solo queue once you have at least 50 games under your belt. It may seem like a hefty commitment and unnecessary, but it'll be worth it and you'll notice the difference. A good indicator that you have the understanding needed on Lee Sin to take him into solo queue games is once your teammates in regular games are stating that you're an insane Lee Sin or spam pinging you after a play. So let's talk how to think about playing Lee Sin. The quicker Lee Sin can gank and create advantages for his team, the faster he can snowball that team to victory. Lee Sin's damage is very high early game, so players need to use it to their advantage and trust that they can win mid to jungle 2v2s. Towards the mid game, Lee Sin should continue to apply pressure and set up picks onto any enemy he can find without flash, especially carry champions. Any carry champion without flash should be permanently seeing a gray screen. Now that we've established the general concepts behind Lee Sin's abilities, his strengths, and his general identity, it's time to discuss what you need to set up in your runes before you play him. While Lee Sin's runes can change quite drastically once you have a handful of playstyles, the standard setup is Conqueror, Triumph, Legend Alacrity, and Coup de Grace with a Magical Footwear and Cosmic Insight in the Inspiration tree. This setup is obviously optimal for Lee Sin's skirmish heavy playstyle, where Conqueror can easily be stacked and make his fighting that much more potent. To add to this, Triumph allows Lee Sin to capitalize more on his bloodthirsty playstyle by getting more gold and restoring health on takedowns. Legend Alacrity allows Lee Sin to gain permanent attack speed with each unique takedown, again further pushing his skirmishing strength to the next level. Finally, Coup de Grace synergizes incredibly well with his execute damage on his Resonating Strike. To help with his early game skirmishing focus, Magical Footwear will allow Lee Sin to prioritize purchasing more damage with his gold. Cosmic Insight will give him bonus haste for his summoners and items that Lee Sin will use a lot. So now onto items. Lee Sin's starting item is almost always Ember Knife with refillable potion. This will give him challenging smite once again, amplifying his skirmishing power to deal true damage and take reduced damage from the smote enemy. Ideally, Lee Sin will rush Iron Spike Whip to help his clear speed and increase his damage output. This item is also incredibly gold efficient and will help him build into his ideal mythic item, Gore Drinker. The best set of boots will depend significantly on the situation you find yourself in. To keep it simple though, build plated steel caps if your jungle matchup is attack damage oriented, or merc treads if they are AP oriented. Lee Sin will build Sterix Gauge to finish the core build here, and will start initiating teamfights with a pick on an enemy at this stage in the game. As a result, he will find himself in the middle of the enemy team. This makes Sterix shielding against the burst damage incredibly valuable, and the increased lifesteal crucial to his ability to engage effectively and survive. After the core build, the remainder is generally situational and entirely personal taste. The most common items that the best Lee Sin players take are some combination of GA, Death Stance, Black Cleaver, Spirit Visage, and Thornmail. Of course, just like Lee Sin, the situation items are incredibly diverse and up to the individual's interpretation of the situation. If the extent of diversity in Lee Sin's playstyle and builds is not enough to help you understand how difficult Lee Sin can be to play, the combos certainly will. First and foremost is the well-known engage combo, the Insect. Named after the first professional player notorious for doing this combo, Lee Sin Qs an enemy, reactivates the Q, and while in mid-air approaching the enemy, wards behind them, Ws to the ward, and then ults the target towards his teammates. When done in quick succession, the enemy will still have the mark on them from Lee Sin's first Q. The easier combo for the same effect, or the alternative if you do not have wards, is to Q the enemy. Then use your ultimate on, and then immediately after casting, flash behind the enemy to send them in the direction of your teammates. There are many variations of the Insect that are better in various situations that couldn't possibly be covered in one video. Still, these two are the bread and butter engage/pick combos to get down when picking out the champion. I'll go over the last combo, Lee Sin's highest damage output combo, which involves using his passive. So the combo actually starts with an auto attack, then Q, then E, and then use any item that deals damage, i.e. Gore Drinker, R, auto attack before they are knocked out of range, and then reactivate the Q to dash them, and then auto attack again. A quick variation of this, if you do not start in melee range to begin with, the basic attack is to Q and then immediately ward hop into melee range to a basic attack and then continue the combo afterward. Quickly touching on matchups, by far the most difficult matchups are the champions that can stat check him incredibly well and are strictly designed for fighting. So think champions like Trundle, Vi, Rek'Sai, and Warwick. These are the top examples here. The ideal ban when playing Lee Sin is just whatever of these champions you hate playing against the most, or perhaps the one with the highest pick rate at the time. Otherwise, the tankier matchups will not do you because of your Conqueror. The higher damage matchups either have fewer defenses, less sustain, or fewer resources than you, where Lee Sin can still capitalize on their mistakes. Quickly touching on mid to late, Lee Sin is much more challenging in mid to late than his early game. His power becomes less overwhelming, and his role tends to be more of a supportive and engage focused playstyle. Considering how difficult his engage to pull off mechanically, it can easily make or break the game how well you can execute the combos. Overall though, Lee Sin is an incredibly worthwhile investment for any League player looking to master one champion over the rest of their life. Every game is different, and every game is plenty of fun on Lee Sin. His early game power is a great way to use your mechanics to create an advantage for your team by counter jungling, ganking, and just fighting a lot. If you're looking to master the unmasterable and brutally style on your enemies, Lee Sin is the pick for you. Hopefully this video was insightful to you guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay fresh.